This is the Storyworks Roundtable, where we have conversations about craft. Because becoming a successful author begins with writing a great story. Hello and welcome to this week's Storyworks Roundtable. Today, Robert, Kathryn, and I are talking about the relationship between your plot arc and your character arc, which I know is going to lead us into a discussion of plot and theme as well, because theme is so closely tied to our character arc. And we've got a great film example here to kind of set the stage. Kathryn, do you want to give us a summary of Finding Nemo?
Welcome to my world. We have just started watching Finding Nemo. I am now about 12 repetitions into it, so I know the story well. So Finding Nemo, in the beginning, the father loses the mother fish and all of the other babies, so he lives in fear of losing his last remaining son, Nemo, and then he loses him, right? A human comes, takes him off the reef, takes him back to a fish tank. So then you embark on this long, epic journey with the father, Marlin, to go find Nemo. He acquires allies in Dory and Crush the turtle, and then the pelican, Nigel, as he goes and finds his son and then brings him back to the reef, right? So in a nutshell, plot-wise, that's what happens. And then all along the journey, he learns what it means to be a better father to his son and to help his son grow and to lose that fear that he will lose his son if he allows him to be himself. So there you go. Finding Nemo in a nutshell.
Excellent. Okay, so plot arc is obvious, as it should be, because the plot is all about the external events. It is the what happens in a story that can be acted out on the stage of the page or the stage of the theater or the sound stage of the film. So Nemo, only child, gets kidnapped, and Marlin, father, clownfish, embarks on epic quest through the ocean to rescue his son from captivity. Very, very straightforward quest story with a clear-cut prize at the end of the journey, the rescue of Nemo. And the character arc here really stands out in the bookends of the story. So before Nemo is even hatched, this big fish comes and, eats Marlin's wife and all of the fish eggs except one, right? So we understand the origin of Marlin's fear, which we might call his fatal flaw. Kathryn was mentioning his flaw before we hit record here. And we understand what is driving his journey, why he could never let go of or give up on Nemo. And then at the end, the other end of the bookends, Marlin doesn't only rescue Nemo, he lets Nemo go off on a new adventure. So, Kathryn, do you want to tell us what is Finding Nemo really about?
It's really about Marlin getting over his own fear, right? And about family and how that family evolves over time.
Right, which is what makes it relatable to all of us. So not only do we not need to be fish or live in an ocean or scuba dive in order to connect with Marlin and his journey, we also don't need to have experienced the loss of a child or a trauma like kidnapping or disappearance, because we all understand that children grow up and letting go can be difficult. And there's a point when they have to leave the proverbial nest, or in Marlin's case, the coral reef, right? And so that's why the story is so successful. Its plot is about this journey through the ocean to save the child, but it's really about parents letting their children grow up. Yeah.
It's interesting to listen to you talk about it, because without that part of it, so if it didn't have that change for Marlin, then it would be just popcorn. Just be kind of
Yes.
an interesting adventure, perhaps, might entertain little ones. But I think one of the secrets to making, uh, especially movies that appeal to all ages, is not just throwing in, the adult cameos and the adult jokes in there that the kids don't get, but it's also providing some kind of an arc that touches everybody, and the kids don't necessarily know that it touches them because they're caught up with the fascinating characters and the adventure. But of course, at one level, that emotional theme is still working on them. But for the adults who are sort of nodding their heads and watching, going, "Oh yeah, yeah, Marlin needs to let go," it's makes it all the more appealing. So you sort of think, well, okay, if I reverse that around and strip that out, it wouldn't be much of a story, or at least it would just be a quick read, and then you move on. It becomes forgettable. Yet this movie came out, a fair number of years ago. And it's still serving as a wonderful, entertaining piece, isn't it, Kathryn? Over and over.
It really is. Well, and I was thinking about it as I was watching it this morning, that if it had ended right after Nemo comes home, right? Marlin finds Nemo and they're not even home yet. But if it had ended right then, even though you have that satisfaction of, oh, yay, he's back with his dad, like it would have felt hollow without that extra bit of Marlin then having to confront that fear again of him losing his son and reacting differently, right? So if he hadn't at the end reacted differently because of that evolution, then we would have just been like, oh, okay, here we go again. Now Nemo's in a different form of captivity, one of his parents making rather than one of, aquarium making. But it would have been, that without that piece, it would have not been as satisfying of an ending. So, it was an interesting revelation this morning as I'm watching a child's movie.
Right. Well, and you're really highlighting for us, Kathryn, the way the character arc is about the protagonist's evolution. And although Nemo is the title character of the story, he's the prize at the end of the quest. He's not the protagonist. It's Marlin who's actually the protagonist, who collects all of the friends and battles the foes on the way to, rescue the princess from the tower or the son from the aquarium, as it is. And so that end note has to be about how this journey changes Marlin, how our protagonist is now different as a result of the trials that he has been through. And without that, however fantastic your plot is, your story becomes forgettable. It's popcorn, as Robert said. Delicious, but quickly consumed and leaves you hungry.
Yeah, it shows how important that crisis and climax are in a scene, but without what follows, the resolution part, then your story can be flawed. Doesn't necessarily mean it's not enjoyable, but it becomes that much deeper with the tone elements in there as well. And I think that's one of the tricky things in a novel as well, is how much denouement you need in order to resolve things, but not go on and on too much, and batter the reader over the head with, this is what's changed. Look at him now. Look at her now. Look at what they're doing. It's just enough. So it's I'm gonna go all metaphorical to it's the Goldilocks thing. So we've got them to get away from popcorn. You got to go Goldilocks. But yeah, just enough in there to touch on the theme.
Yes.
Without making it heavy-handed.
Right. And the denouement, right. The denouement and the end note need to convey the shift that has occurred in that character in a very concise way, because the story is essentially over. And, we need to have the character arc show the protagonist's evolution so that when that change happens, it makes sense. So as Marlin goes on this journey, not only does he confront dangers, which is what has kept him terrified of letting Nemo go out and explore the world all along. But he also sees wonders of the world, makes new friends, develops a sense of community. And so at the end, when he does let Nemo go out, he knows that Nemo's not really ever going to be alone. You know, there's going to be a Dory, there's going to be a whoever else. I haven't seen the movie this morning, so right. But if you didn't have those elements along the way of the plot, Marlin's end, his resolution to his character arc wouldn't be convincing. So you need the plot arc and the character arc to be wed. They need to weave together so that everything makes sense, you know, because of Marlin's character, his fears make sense. So we understand that aspect of the plot. We understand how threatening the big world is to him. Because the plot involves Marlin finding allies and help along the way, we can accept that he's ready to finally let Nemo go at the end. So there's always going to be a meshing of your plot arc and your character arc, which of course also then meshes together your plot and your theme. And your theme is about the meaning making, right? And the relatability. And if plot's the body, theme is the heart.
Right. I think also, I think if I hadn't been thinking theme, or if I hadn't been thinking about his fear and his letting go as such a main part, you know, you might be tempted to make the climax him flying in with the pelican and rescuing his son, right? But he doesn't rescue him in that moment. That's not the end. That's not the climax. And I think that's where, to me, I was like, oh yeah, like the climax wasn't the plot climax so much as it was it waited. You know, it waited so that he had that moment to develop a little bit more, and then the climax itself was the character arc. It had a plot element and an action moment, but it was the character arc became the climax of the whole story, which I love, which I wouldn't have necessarily thought about without having seen it.
So I haven't seen the movie today, but I mean, it's been years and years. But I'm inclined to want to clarify. Yeah. If you're listening to this podcast, you are probably a writer, and you've maybe heard me talk about the Storyworks reading series. It is the new branch in the Storyworks family tree. It is a literary journal podcast. That's right, a hybrid, a literary journal for your ears, with a print anthology at the end of the year of the best of the podcast. I am open for submissions, and I want to see your best prose right now. I am taking both fiction and creative nonfiction. You can read the guidelines and submit your work at storyworkspodcast.com/submit. What are you waiting for? It's time to see your stories published and sit on the other side of this microphone from me. Have a conversation about your storycraft.
So he flies in to rescue his son, right? Nemo plays dead, and he ends up going down the drain. And so Marlin thinks all is lost, everything's over, right? And so he goes off, he has a fight with Dory, and then Nemo finds Dory. Dory remembers, and they all meet up again. And then Dory gets caught in a net, and now Nemo knows how to solve the problem because of previous encounters. And so Marlin has to let him go to rescue Dory. So in my mind, the adventure plot line where Marlin is going to rescue Nemo would have climaxed at, hey, I found him in the aquarium and I'm going to rescue him. But they chose to not make that the climax, right? So he has to come off of that, and then here we go again. Nemo's with him before we get the actual climax of events, which I found very interesting. But without that, him having to let go and let Nemo rescue Dory now, rather than Marlin being the hero all the way through, it works better because of the character arc. than if Marlin had swooped in with a pelican and taken Nemo out of the aquarium. So,
Right. Yeah, I would still say that the movement of the climax, right? And a climax often spans multiple chapters because there's so much that needs to occur. So I'd say the movement of the climax of the plot is that, well, the climax is that, he swoops in with the pelican and it lasts until he's again reunited, has that second reunion. And then, Dory being taken away is separate from Marlin's quest. And that's really part of the denouement because that sets him up for letting Nemo go be the hero of his own story, right? So it's kind of a passing of a baton. It's a very beautiful. Marlin was the hero of his journey to rescue Nemo, and now he gets to let Nemo be the hero of Nemo's journey to rescue Dory. And that's really what letting your children go live their own lives is all about, letting them become the protagonist of their story. They're no longer under your wing, under your control, under your rules and guidelines and guidance and support. They're off in the world and you aren't constantly part of their feedback loop, right? So they become the hero of their own journey. So that is the resolution of his character arc. I'm being nitpicky with their terminology and making climax really stick to that plot. And then this Dory passing of the baton to Nemo being the character arc's resolution, which comes about through the completion of the plot arc.
Yeah, and it's not done in a syrupy sort of sugary fashion with telling either. It's not sort of, them getting together and saying, Marlin saying to Nemo, I really have to let you go and live your own life. It's done in action and in a nested form in the sense that it's the same quest, as you say, Alida, repeated, but only this time another character has to live that. So it's very cleverly done. Well, perfectly done, really. It's the way it should be done.
Yes, exactly. And all of our novels should resolve with that moment that leaves the reader feeling something that they're going to carry forward. So it's not just successful completion of the plot, but it's that transformation of the character and showing it, finding that piece of action that can be played out on the stage of the page is the way you put that transition in front of the reader successfully. As you're saying, Robert, you want to have your protagonist enact that transformation, right? It's not about psychology. It's about behavior. It's about actually being, living, doing the end of that arc.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. I've always liked the phrase, our behaviour shouts louder than what we say. And I think that's a good maxim to use for your characters in books, because the temptation as an author, obviously, is you have the authorial knowledge, so you can explain things. You can say, and Jeanette went on to live happily ever after, and big deal, so what? But if we can write something that shows that, and also bookends to the opening of the story, so that we get that very satisfying resolution, then I suppose that's the kind of perfection we're aiming for in theme, or at least theme as demonstrated through character arc, anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, absolutely. And there should also be that nice connection to the beginning of the story. We talk about coming full circle and mirrors and echoes and such. And as Kathryn was saying, Finding Nemo wouldn't be satisfying if it ended with Marlin and Nemo's reunion. And it wouldn't be satisfying either if the resolution was Marlin took Nemo back to the reef, Nemo grew up, found a nice little girl clownfish, and they laid some eggs together, right? We'd be like, yeah, okay, happily ever after, we get it. But no, we want Nemo to go live a full, exciting, adventurous life, because we are riding the high of Marlin's adventure. So you don't want to drop your audience's high after a big adventure story to like cozy cottage with the white picket fence, right?
Yeah.
You want to be like, yeah, next adventure. Where's Nemo 2? I want to see Nemo rescue Dory. And so, yeah, okay, we could be say, oh, it's all commercialism. It's all set up for the sequel, but it's not, because it's also that mirroring effect and that coming full circle and that giving the reader the feeling to walk away with, which in this story is one of excitement.
Amazing how much you can get out of a cartoon.
I know we are going deep with Finding Nemo.
I think for me the biggest thing though, you can go straight into like analyzing your own arcs though, which is where I went after watching that, was like, okay, how have I been doing that? Am I focused too much on my plot and not enough on my character arc? And what am I really trying to get people to walk away with from this? And I think in my brain, I immediately started analyzing my climactic, plot and saying, okay, but does that resolve with the feeling at the end where I'm like, okay, and this, which is what I feel like Nemo does so well, is the and this, and this, and this, also individually, that you can easily pick them out, right? Not every story does it as delineated like that. A lot of them kind of wrap them together a little bit differently, right? So it was just neat to kind of look at it and go, oh, that's that. Oh, that's that. Oh, there we go. I get that feeling. I get the theme. I get the character arc wrap up. I get the plot wrap up, and be able to see it individually, which then makes me want to go back and look at my stuff and say, okay, can I identify, did I come back and echo that? Did I find that thematic point in the climax, etc., it's a fun thing to start, as you unfold things with craft, like you'll still see the same stuff over and over again, but it makes you think differently about your own work the more you're exposed to it, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is why we have these conversations, so that we can then turn the lens on our own writing and go, ooh, am I doing it? Is it working?
Yeah, funny enough, I've been working on, gone back to the second book in this difficult trilogy, and I have a friend locally. We're meeting up once a week to just keep us on track. And I think I made a decent breakthrough in where I was having a problem in the outline and the middle of the story. It's half the text is written. It's just that I couldn't get this bridge to where I wanted it to go. And there's a huge amount of this story which is underpinned by the main character's previous life as a space pirate and living an independent life, being impulsive, not having to risk other people's lives, and all of a sudden she finds herself caught up in the middle of a kind of galactic-wide conspiracy and potential war, where some of those decisions could be incredibly far-reaching if she does it wrong, and she still does it wrong. So it's interesting talking about this, because I'm thinking that my denouement is good, but it probably needs another little touch in there just to show it rather than tell it. So yeah, thank you, Kathryn.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Other thoughts on Finding Nemo, or plot and character arc, weddings, or denouement?
I think you can get a lot from, if you think about these types of stories that have stuck with us, particularly kids' stories. I think there's a clue there as well. There's a reason they get passed on from generation to generation. Why does everybody go through The Hungry Caterpillar? Why does everybody watch Sleeping Beauty? These are classic stories that have something that's just deeper than, well, what I might trivially call popcorn. So why not? If you are involved with children and you are forced to watch these more than once, it's a wonderful learning opportunity, because as Kathryn so wonderfully dissected for us, there are many moving parts in there that can go unnoticed if you just think it's something that I've got on to, to entertain the children, or I have to go to the theatre because it's what they want to see.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. These stories would not be as successful as they are if they weren't playing to all ages. Parents spend the money, and as parents, or you figure out very quickly when your children are young that these things are going to play on repeat. So if you just can't stand it, if there's nothing in it for you, it's not going to be long-lived. It's going to be the DVD that gets shoved under the couch and disappears for 5 years, right? Are you ready to take your storycraft to the next level? StoryWorks Fiction Online School has courses available right now, from micro courses on character traits to master level workshops on plot and building characters. There are also live workshops with your instructor in the classroom with you every week, guiding your progress and workshopping your manuscripts along the way. All students enrolled in StoryWorks Fiction, whether active in a class or not, can take advantage of the monthly free live Q&A calls with Alida. Check out storyworksfiction.com today and take your storycraft to the next level. Thank you for listening to the StoryWorks Roundtable. Find all our shows, show notes, and videos at storyworkspodcast.com.